right now, the congressman representing Montana's 2nd Congressional District, Matt Rosendale. Congressman, good to have you with us. Happy New Year, sir.
Happy New Year, Vince. Good to be on with you.
Real quick, do you know who's running the Department of Defense right now? Any idea?
Oh, my gosh. I am introducing a resolution tomorrow for impeachment. I mean, this is really, really frightening. We've got two major issues that the country is facing, and that is our southern border is being invaded and this mounting $34 trillion in debt. When the Secretary of Defense is MIA, that just compounds everything else. Every threat that is presented to the country, every conflict that is going on around the world right now, this is very problematic.
So you're going to introduce articles of impeachment for Loyd Austin tomorrow?
Tomorrow.
Do you have anybody who's co-signing with you?
We're going. Look, I just hit the ground. I literally, within the last 30 minutes, hit the ground here in Washington, D.C., and we're putting this together. We've got a chain of abuses that has taken place, a chain of lies that have been distributed from him to the American people, and this has got to stop.
Well, why would you pick on him? He's a secret medical issue that he hasn't disclosed to the American people, Congressman.
Look, nothing's personal with me, Vince. You know that. This is all about policy. And if you are sitting in one of the most important positions in our country's leadership chain of command, and you're lying to the American people, you need to move on.
It's amazing that we're even experiencing this, but, I keep saying that every week. All right, let's talk about something else that's amazing that we're experiencing, unfortunately, which is the collapse of our nation's borders. You were among a group of some 60 or so Republican congressmen who went to the border last week to see it firsthand. What was that experience like, and do you think it's actually going to move the ball in restoring the border?
So it's my fourth trip down, Vince. This is not my maiden voyage. I've established some relationships with CBP and with some of the law enforcement down there so that I know that I can get accurate information. We went down, a group of us, a day early, myself, two reps from Arizona, Biggs and Eli Crane, Bob Good, and our good friend Matt Gates from Florida. We went down, and we were actually doing ride-alongs, if you will, starting at 8:30 p.m. on Tuesday evening. Everyone else wasn't scheduled to be down until like Thursday. And we saw the people crossing the Rio Grande. These are things that we all know have been going on. Another record was hit. 302,000 illegals were encountered at the southern border. Many of these people, we don't know who they are. Everybody went down to Eagle Pass. There was 10,000 people there the week before, 10,000 illegals there the week before Congress showed up. And, of course, by the time Congress gets there with Speaker Johnson, the administration has everything sanitized, cleaned up. You can't even tell that anybody had been there. But here's the scary part. I spoke with CBP, and out of those 10,000 people, just that one group from that 1 week that came in, they had 200 people of special interest that were amongst them. These are people that they can't quite identify who they are. They can't tell which countries they've come from. They don't think that they're getting accurate information. They're concerned about what their intent is as they get into America, if they're going to try and hurt us or not. Guess what? When they redistributed those 10,000 people so that they wouldn't be there for Congress to see them, they took those 200 and redistributed them as well. And so what I continue to tell everybody is we know what the problem is. And if you truly recognize the imminent national security threat that this poses, stop talking about it. What are you willing to do in order to change it? That's what the real question should be to every member of Congress. Well, I'll tell you what I'm willing to do. I'm willing to not fund the government on January the 19th. I'm willing to make sure that we hold the administration and the Senate feet to the fire and say we're not doing anything until our southern border is secure, because it truly is a national security threat.
It really is. Did you get any insight into whether or not the Biden administration intentionally moved those 10,000 people ahead of your arrival? Did the Border Patrol indicate?
Absolutely, they did. Yes, absolutely, they did. They intentionally moved those people out of there, and now because of the activity and the ability for the cartels to see what we're doing, when we're doing it, how we're doing it. What they do is they back off the flow of illegals going across the border for a few days as well, because guess what? They don't want all of that to be on camera with all of the members of Congress there. So they redirect some of those folks as well. The fellow who has now been brought on by Governor Abbott as their border czar, which is doing an incredibly good job as compared to certainly to our border czar, right, which is Kamala. The guy down there, his name's Banks, Mike Banks. He is the one who has put up the wire. He is the one who has put up the floating barriers in the river. He is the one who has brought in 12 different states to help him, whether it's law enforcement or National Guards, and they are pushing them. Now, the flow of traffic is still coming in. It's just redistributing it up to Arizona. It's redistributing it up to California. Those people are still going to be coming into our country. But he says, my job is to make sure they don't come into Texas, because we have been absolutely overrun with illegals over the last 3 years.
Yes, indeed. So as you talk about Texas responding to this, one of the rationales for why Texas feels entitled to do this is because they believe that under Article 1, Section 10 of the Constitution, they're being invaded. And of course, that is literally what's happening. You're talking millions of people, foreign nationals, pouring into the country, into places like Texas and Arizona. We're undergoing an invasion. Why, first of all, I know the answer to this, but why doesn't the Biden administration use that word at all to describe what's happening here? And can Congress at any point, declare it an invasion and say, look, there's no question that the states have the right to push back here?
We can and we must. Vince, here's the thing. When I meet with my colleagues in Congress after they went down to the border, and they all, some of them, it was their first trip down, and they talk about how terrible this is and it's a catastrophe. I mean, the law enforcement down there, they say this isn't an illegal immigration problem. What this is a slave trade problem. They're literally millions of people that are being sold into slavery because they obligate themselves financially to the cartel to get into our country, okay? And so everybody talks about how bad it is, and I make it real simple. I say, okay, what are you willing to do? I am tired of hearing that Congress has the power of the purse. If we use it, Vince, only if we use it. Because then you have to stand strong and say that we're not going to accept some kind of BS deal coming back down from the Senate. We're not going to accept some kind of watered-down BS deal coming down from the White House. We have the power of the purse string if we use it. If we don't, then we don't have any power whatsoever. And unfortunately, most of these people up here walk around like they should be carrying a purse instead of utilizing the power of the purse.
Unbelievable. So here's the thing that drives me crazy. One of them, and I know it drives you too crazy as well, Congressman Rosendale. But on fixing the border, you hear a lot of conversation on the Capitol about how much do we need to spend on this issue, or what law can we pass to get the border fixed. And I'm sitting there going, well, wait a second. It doesn't matter what you do, because the law is already that the Biden administration is supposed to enforce the border. They're supposed to stop illegal immigrants. They're supposed to deport people who are here illegally. They're not doing any of those things. So why would new laws or new money change any of it?
Oh, spot on. CBP pleads with us. Please don't send more money down here, because if Congress sends more money down here, they're going to build more soft-sided structures. They're going to bring in more CBP officers, and all they're going to do is have us processing more illegals faster. And so we will exasperate the situation. What we need to do is make sure that the Biden administration authorizes ICE to go out and conduct their raids to deport people that are here illegally, number one. Number two, we need to start making people that are trying to claim asylum status, 98% of them, which is wrongfully claiming, okay, that while they're waiting to adjudicate that claim and have a hearing, they must remain in Mexico, and that will keep them from entering into our country for 6 or 8 years, wandering around illegally, okay, without the ability to remove them because they've been allowed to enter in. And then we must secure the border security system.
Yes.
That's the wall. That's the fiber optics in the ground. That's the cameras. That's the roads that parallel that system. Those are the three things that we need to do.
Okay, but meanwhile, the Biden administration is pretending like, oh, Mexico can fix all of this for us by just securing their own southern border. And Mexico's president, Andres Manuel Lopez Obrador, AMLO, has announced this week that in order to enforce his own southern border, he is asking that the United States send him $20 billion to help Mexico and Central American countries deal with the so-called root causes of migration. He also wants the United States to provide at least 10 million Hispanic migrants, that would be illegal immigrants, who have been living in the U.S. for 10 years or longer with visas, which would put them on a pathway to citizenship. So these are the demands. This sounds like a ransom demand, that I'll only help you if you give me a lot of money and you let illegals stay in your country.
Yeah, I can cure that real quick, as could President Trump. You want me to tell you something? You say, you're not going to send another avocado north of the border unless you straighten things out. Guess what? They start straightening things out. You've got to play hardball. This is not, as they say, beanbag. Yeah. Okay, and when you go into and enter into negotiations, whether it's with a foreign country, a foreign adversary, or just over on the Senate side of the building, by golly, you've got to draw some lines in the sand, and they've got to believe that you will enforce them. And that is the problem that we have in Congress, because Chuck Schumer knows that he can roll over top of us. That's the problem that we have with the other countries. Yeah. They know that they can roll over us. And quite frankly, Vince, they know that we don't want to secure our border. They know that this administration, Mayorkas and Biden, want to create a permanent underclass within our country, whether that is people that are eventually going to become voters, or if they just are perpetually dependent upon the federal government. Either way, they are winners.
Yes.
The Democrats are winners in this thing.
And they pad the numbers.
People that are coming in here illegally are the losers.
And they pad the population numbers for their own electoral strength, too. So one other piece here, and it's a super important one. I wish we had more time for it. But Congressman Rosendale, we see all these headlines that Speaker Mike Johnson and Chuck Schumer have reached a big old government funding deal, $1.6 trillion. And this was delayed for a time to allow for more negotiating, to make it so that Republicans could secure some cuts. You know, what's the end result here, and how are you grading Speaker Johnson's handling of this?
It's a crab sandwich is what it is. They made microscopic reductions in spending. We're talking about a $7 trillion spend on an annual basis, and these guys talk about $6 billion like they have really done something. We're still post-COVID spending levels. Why is it that when COVID struck and they ended up pumping another $2 trillion a year into the federal spending, why can't we reduce and go back to the pre-COVID levels? Everybody says, oh, it's so difficult to cut. No, it isn't. I ran an agency, okay, before I came to Congress, and from 2016 until 2020, I ran the insurance commissioner and securities office for the state of Montana. I cut my spending in 4 years by 23%. Not the increases, Vince. I cut the spending for the agency by 23%. And we absolutely have got to cut. These things that they're talking about are minuscule. We went along, okay, with some negotiations and some conversations early in the year, and we were supposed to get discretionary spending down to $1.471 trillion. And that is still, okay, too high. I mean, you could literally eliminate 100% of the discretionary spending. Think about this. And we would still be running somewhere at about $1.5 trillion a year of structural deficit, okay, adding that much more to the national debt annually. If we eliminated 100% of discretionary. So you're telling me we can't cut $100 billion out of it? It is absolutely ridiculous. And that's before we even have any conversations about all the other stuff that's been left in there, so that taxpayers are being forced to pay for transgender surgeries and treatments, and taxpayers are being forced to pay for abortions, and taxpayers are being forced to line the pockets of these big corporate interests that are pushing renewable energy deals, whether that's battery-operated vehicles or solar or wind farms. The taxpayer is on the hook for all that stuff. And it's all still contained in these spending measures, and I'm not going to sign off on it, and especially considering it is still leaving our border wide open.
Big time.
That is exposing us to a national security threat.
It's also totally corrupt. Lastly, sir, I promised last time I'd ask you a question about this. I want to ask you today. Are you running for Senate in Montana? Do we have any news to share today?
We've had some really, really good meetings, not only with family, because obviously over the Christmas holiday I was able to visit with all three of my sons and my grandchildren and had some really quality time. But I also spent some time doing some additional visits around the district, and we'll be making a decision here directly. But it's overwhelming the amount of support that I have. But we still, Vince, have some really, really important things that I've got to deal with over the next 30 days when it comes to this spending and our southern border security.
All right. Congressman Matt Rosendale of Montana, perhaps a future senator. We'll talk to him as things move along. Thank you, sir. Very nice to talk to you today.